Pleasure to turn to Steve Lindy, the editor of the Jerusalem Report, for a conversation with Yael Eckstein, president of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews.
Welcome to Yael Eckstein, president and CEO of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Tell us, how has the fellowship been operating under this trying period of coronavirus?
Thank you so much, Steve. So the fellowship is equipped to respond immediately to emergencies. And so within the first day of elderly being forced to stay at home, we were able to arrange to bring over 30,000 elderly food packages. And when we saw that the hospitals had to open up emergency centers to treat the COVID patients, we immediately provided them with respirators and other emergency equipment that they would need. So just like we operate during war in the field as missiles are falling, we continue to operate in the field, Baruch Hashem, thank God, during the COVID crisis as well.
How are you managing during social distancing rules and everything when you're so used to going out and meeting people all the time?
Well, technology is amazing, I'll tell you that. We've been having community meetings, both with our donors, and we've really arranged ways to check on our recipients. We have volunteers, thousands of them, who call up the elderly, because just as much as hunger and going out to get the food is a problem for the elderly, the loneliness is sometimes even more devastating for them. So we have thousands of volunteers who are calling, and we have bringing food boxes instead of food cards to them so they don't need to leave their house. So we've really come together as a community, both with our Jewish and Christian donors in America and Canada, along with our recipients, to be able to bring together the communities who need it most.
The IFCJ, the fellowship as you call it, seems to be spearheading a renaissance in Christian-Jewish ties. What more can be done to promote these relations?
Well, what we see, Steve, is that Christian support for Israel is critical. Right now, the fellowship is 20% ahead of our budget that we set out in the end of 2019, which means that it's Christians who are doing even more than the fellowship projected. We plan to reach $130 million this year in aid for Israel and the Jewish people. But the truth is, that's just one detail. That's just one area of support that Christians give to Israel, because the truth is it's so much broader than that. When we have the love and the prayers and the support of Christians throughout the world, 100 million in China, 60, 90 million in America, 90% of South America identify as being Christian, we have the ability to really cultivate this relationship for political support, tourism, investment in Israel, that the Christian community is standing with Israel, and it's up to us to figure out where we need their help and how we can foster that relationship to really strengthen Israel and the Jewish people.
It's been a year since your father, Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein, Zichrono Livracha, passed away tragically. How has it been to take over the reins of the fellowship from him?
Well, it definitely has been a learning experience, but I have the most amazing team and donors and supporters around the world. My father left me a strong organization. He planted roots in a mission that he believed in, Jewish-Christian relations, which is something that I have received the calling, that every day when I work at the fellowship to strengthen the organization, strengthen Jewish-Christian relations, to be able to provide more aid for Jews in need, it's something that it's not just a job, it's a calling, it's a mission. And so being able to continue to grow the organization that my father dreamed about when my mom was pregnant with me, and see it just continue to flourish and help more people and reach the next generation of Christians across the world is a zchut, it's a privilege.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about the activities of the fellowship today, and also about increasing Aliyah.
It's amazing to see kind of the miracles that have happened as the skies are closed and there are basically no flights. The fellowship has been working with the government and other local organizations on the ground to bring Olim home during this crisis. From places like Venezuela, together with the Jewish Agency, from places like Peru, from Ukraine, from Russia, all across the world, the fellowship is there bringing the Jewish people home now as they're not as safe and feel like they just have to get to Israel. Both people who had planned beforehand that they were going to come to Israel, we've tried to make sure that they continue those plans, along with people who have turned to us in emergency situations. So I'd say there have been two miracles that have happened over over this COVID crisis. One is that the Aliyah has continued, that we continue at least weekly, sometimes daily, to bring in new Olim, immigrants to Israel. And the second is that because of the huge increase in emergency requests for basic needs, the fellowship has been able to work with the government to get 5 million shekel to distribute in basic needs to poor families struggling throughout Israel.
So what would you say is the main challenge facing you because of COVID-19?
Well, we always work with the Ministry of Welfare. We always work according to criteria, not only city. When we began this work in the field, what we realized is that a nonprofit should function like a business, not just like a nonprofit that if you're helping people, dayenu, it's enough. But you have to work with very clear goals and KPIs, very clear criteria, deliverables. And every quarter we assess ourselves to say, are we meeting those goals that we've set for ourselves of helping even more people, making a dollar go even further, doing it in even more of a respectable way. And so we really had all of our goals and deliverables set out for the year, and then COVID struck. And what we see is that more people are turning to us for need while nonprofits are falling. So it's this increase in urgent requests for help for things like food and electricity, to help pay the water bill, cab rides to get treatments at the hospital because there are no more buses. And at the same time, organizations that used to be helping with these things are falling. Their budget isn't even what they thought it would be. Some of them are closing overnight. And so the pressure on the fellowship to do as much as we can to help as many people as possible, we felt very strongly over the COVID crisis. But I guess, they say that God creates the cure before he creates the disease. And so while we're praying for the cure, we're still experiencing the disease, God has also strengthened the fellowship to be able to provide an extra $10 million just for the COVID crisis relief fund.
Well, on that subject, how are you personally coping with this crisis?
Wow, what a nice question. It's a big responsibility when you know that people are going hungry. 40% of Israelis can't afford their basic needs. There's over 60% increase in emergency requests to the municipal social workers. That I look at myself as in a position that I want to do everything I can to help. And I look at that as really doing that through two things. Number one is strengthening the Christian community support for Israel. But this is the first time, Steve, in maybe the history of Israel where the same crisis Israel is facing is faced by the rest of the world. Normally we have wars in Israel and we turn to the Christian community for help, and then we're able to build 5,500 bomb shelters. From their position of peace and security, they want to help Israel stay protected. But now they're also fighting COVID. Their people are also going hungry. Their churches are also having funds for food for their neighbors. How do you ensure that the people of Israel will get what they need when everyone else is suffering? But it's really just such a strong testimony to how Christian support for Israel is so strong, is so passionate, is not going to be swayed by anything because their love for Israel, just as it says in Genesis 12:3, as they'll quote, you bless the people of Israel and I will bless you, says God, that they will not waver from that.
And finally, what are your future plans?
Well, it's amazing to see how the dream my father, Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein, had 36 years ago of bridging Christians and Jews and shared communication, shared values, and strategic partnerships to help Israel and the Jewish people, that now you see all over that's happening. The fellowship isn't the only organization that's working in this area, which really gives me so much hope. It's people say, oh, Yael, your father was first in the market, you suddenly have competition. I say, no, that's not competition. That is a sign that my father's vision came to fruition. He was successful in it. But what I see is that we really have to invest in the next generation of Christians, because the older generation of Christians saw the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. They saw what happened to the Jewish people in the Holocaust. They saw in 1967 when the whole world thought that Israel was just going to kill the Arabs that remained here, just like they wanted to put Israel into the sea. They saw Israel actually gave them citizenship. They know that no matter what the media says of BDS and using disproportionate measures during war, they know that that's not true. But the next generation of Christians have been raised with BDS, have been raised with Israel as aggressors. And so my passion, my goal, my mission is to continue to educate the next generation of Christians to stand with Israel just as their parents do.
Well, good luck with that and keep up the good work. Thank you so much for joining us, Yael Eckstein.
Thank you, Steve.